This is the first time that we are actually offering, or awarding, I should say, prizes to the outstanding journalism and media majors at Mercy College. When Dick Westerfeld first came to Mercy and told us about the Dorothy Adams Memorial Prize, didn't know what to really think of it. It was nice about the fact that we're being considered one of several Westchester colleges for an award to give to our students. Well, I didn't know much about Dorothy Adams, and then I started to learn something about Dorothy Adams. And I realized how privileged we were to not only have this award for our students, but to associate this award with a woman like Dorothy Adams. Dorothy Adams was actually a Columbia Journalism School graduate in 1932. And she went on to a successful career in public relations. And more than that, there's a spirit to the woman, which I'm going to let her son, who was flown up from Washington, D.C. to be with us tonight, speak to. But what I would like to do before issuing the awards is read just a single paragraph from the eulogy that Ken delivered last year after his mother passed away. And in this moving eulogy, I got to know even more about this remarkable woman. I expect I am not the only one who feels indebted to my mother for the example she set, and the lessons I learned from watching her embrace life. Just as she was never content to sit still and let life go by, she never felt entitled to complain about the hand she was dealt. As far as Mom was concerned, if you wanted something, you went after it. If you didn't like the way things were, you acted to try to change it. And ultimately, you had to take personal responsibility for the results, good or bad, win or lose. Dot Adams actually spent a lifetime trying to do good, especially for the disadvantaged. Maybe Ken will speak to that. And we are going to actually award several prizes tonight in Dorothy Adams' name. But first, can I introduce to you Ken Adams?
Thanks, Paul. Well, it's a pleasure to be here tonight and a privilege to be on the same podium with, I can't call you Ship, I've never met you, Ms. Ship. I'm intrigued by the fact that you went to law school and ended up going to being a journalist covering lawyers. Had you gone to my law school, you might have helped us end the war and keep the cops at bay in '68 in Chicago, but that's another story. I've sort of gone the other way. I guess the writing gene it does get passed from parent to child in some respects, as some of you may in your time. Although I did go to law school, I dabble as a journalist, and I will be leaving tomorrow for Las Vegas for my annual week's fantasy trip, where I cover the World Series of Poker, which is my hobby. As an accredited journalist, I carry a press pass. I'll be covering it this year for the Washingtonian magazine and for the Card Player magazine, as I have for the last 4 years. So I get to dabble in the journalism world, and it's great, because you get to hang out with the players and eat in the buffet with them, and I enjoy being a journalist for a week a year. I like Paul's tradition of not giving speeches, but instead telling stories. That's what we try to do in the courtroom. The fastest way to bore a jury is to lecture them. And most of the cases that we get involved in are about people and what they've done to each other and what their problems are. And if you tell the story in the way that the people would like you to tell it, the people you're representing, most jurors will understand and sometimes even go your way. So let me tell you the story that brings me here tonight on behalf of my sisters and our families. My mother was born in New York City in 1911. That's even before 1955. And when she was your age, journalism really meant only one thing. It meant writing for a newspaper. That's all there was. There was not radio journalism. There was not television journalism, let alone the new forms of journalism that we're all involved in now. I really don't know how she got interested initially in journalism, but by the time she graduated from the Columbia School of Journalism in 1932, The Depression was in full swing. People were lucky to have any kind of a job. And the idea of finding the perfect job in your field, I think, probably was not something that was realistic for somebody right out of school. She did get a job in a bookstore, and I think it was Brentano's in those days in Manhattan. So she was close to books, if not writing for them. But a few years later, she met and married my father. They moved to Westchester County. They had children. And in those days, for the most part, if you were married with children, you stayed home and worked as a homemaker and raised your kids. There were not too many exceptions to that if you were white and middle class in Westchester County. But even then, I do have a very strong memory as a kid growing up of my mother sitting at her Royal typewriter, the standard manual typewriter, which she kept for a long time. And I figured out after hanging around and watching and asking her what she was doing, because she was wearing this funny thing on her head. She was listening to the early version of a dictaphone, produced these little flat kind of vinyl discs. She was typing manuscript and editing manuscript for a friend of our family, who I just knew as Buddy. That was his name. 40-some years later, I know now that he was and is, he's still alive, Dr. Charles Brenner, probably one of the better-known psychoanalysts in the world. And my mother typed and edited his first serious work on psychoanalysis, which is still today, I believe, in most psychoanalytic training programs in the US and Europe, the primary text. It's sort of Psychoanalysis 101. Years later, when all my sisters and I were out of the house and in college, my mother went back into the job market in Westchester County, and then had a succession of jobs and a career in journalism. She was, I think the first job I remember her having was with what was then called the White Plains Art Council, a council for the arts. It was a place in White Plains where artists could display their work and try to sell it. It was kind of tied into some community programs, and she did all their public relations work. Anything that they put out to the community to explain their program, to try to publicize it, to deal with the press, that was what she did. After that, I remember her being the director of public relations at the Westchester County Adoption Services, and after that for the Westchester Association for Retarded Citizens, a job that she quit at the age of 80 in protest because her boss, whom she admired greatly, was fired for reasons that she and her boss thought were terribly unfair, so she quit. Looking for something else to do at that point, she got involved with a wonderful organization known as Combat, which is where she met Dick Westervelt and Gene Robbins, who are here tonight, and Frank Eveline and others. It's a terrific organization, primarily made up of people like them and my mother, retired professionals who lend their experience and hopefully accumulated wisdom to nonprofit organizations throughout Westchester County. About 6 months before my mother died, she was still pretty feisty, but starting to have a lot of physical problems and wasn't able to do for herself the things that she felt she wanted to do and ought to do. Didn't like being helped by other people much. But she did allow me to come spend the weekend with her and help her get organized for moving. She was moving from her apartment in White Plains to a smaller place in a retirement community in Rye where there would be more people and help around. And the only way I could keep her in her chair, because she's having bad back problems, was I got her to sit in her favorite chair, and I would bring past her all her stuff, and she would make decisions. You know, that's going with me, that I'll give away. And we had sort of two sets of boxes, and the stuff she was going to take and the stuff that we were going to give away to wherever it would be appreciated. And my mother was not, as those who know her know, she was not exactly a sentimental sort of person. And she didn't have any problem making decisions like that. You know, it was there, until we got to the books. She had a wall full of books. And all of a sudden she had trouble making decisions. She didn't want to let go of her books. And I watched her struggle with this. You know, as far as I was concerned, anything she wanted to take went in the take box. We'll find a way to keep it there. But she She didn't like the fact that she wanted to hold on to these things that she knew she wasn't going to read anymore. And she knew that the books would be more useful in circulation somewhere where someone would read them and maybe be moved by them. So as time went on, she started allowing me to put the books in the boxes that were going to go off to the library. And she got pretty good at saying library, 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 unless it had some special meaning to it. And then we got to some pretty dusty old books on the very top shelf of this wall unit. And my mother was only like 5 feet. She couldn't, I don't know that she ever reached those books. And those she absolutely would not let go. And it kind of took me by surprise that she had changed her attitude. They were all theater books. They were all books about theater criticism. That was the day that for the first time in my life, at my age, my mother was then 83, I learned that more than anything else, when she was your age, getting ready to graduate from Columbia School of Journalism, she wanted to be a theater critic. Specifically, she wanted to be the theater critic for the New York Times. In 1932, that was not something that she was able to accomplish. She had a lifelong love for the New York theater, as well as for journalism. And I know that nothing would have pleased her more than to provide some small measure of encouragement and help to young journalists in training like all of you. And my sisters and I are delighted that her friends at ComNet chose to honor her memory with this Dot Adams Memorial Prize. And I'm very pleased to be here this evening. I appreciate Mercy College housing the prize and finding deserving young people to give it to every year. And I'm delighted to be able to participate in awarding it for the first time to those of you who are going to receive it tonight. I congratulate you all on your achievements to date, and my sisters and I look forward to reading your bylines or your credits, depending on which direction you go in the years ahead. Thank you.